I don't know how you open and gag for a movie like this, so we're just going to get into it, okay? So, you're going to get a number of reviews over the next week or so that was stuff that I saw either on the plane or in the hotel while I was at the Gallifrey One convention in Los Angeles, because it's a rather lengthy flight. So, I think the first thing I'm going to talk about, because it's the one that's been stuck in my head the most, is Weapons. This is a movie from last year that I really wanted to see, but I was not able to get to while it was in theaters. And I tried to get to it before my HBO Max subscription lapsed, but I didn't cram it in. But they had it on the plane. So I've now seen it. This is the second horror film from director Zach Cregger, who did Barbarian, which I liked. It has some things that I'm like, but like for the most part, it was a very bold and confident first foray into horror. It had a really interesting structure. It definitely really nailed a lot of what it was going for. And in many, many, many ways, Weapons feels like a refinement of what Krieger did on Barbarian. The short version of this is that I really, really like this movie a lot. It's one of those things where the more I think about it, the more I find to admire about it. Um, I am eventually going to talk spoilers, but I'm going to avoid those for as long as I can. But if you like horror movies, if you like being surprised by horror movies, and you have not already had any of this spoiled for you, which I had barely anything kind of hinted at as being spoilery for me, so I still had a good experience. Like, I go in as cold as you can. That is the best way to experience it, because going in cold or as close to cold as you're able to, the experience that you get is you spend the first hour basically continually asking yourself, I can't talk, continually asking yourself, what in the hell is going on? Not in a I can't follow events way, but in a what in the hell do these things add up to way. And it's very captivating. Again, largely because of how confidently it is presented. And then you're going to spend the back hour coming to understand exactly what in the hell's going on and just being left stunned to the extent of it. And it's really, really well put together. Somewhat similar to Barbarian, it has an unconventional structure. It's not structured exactly the same as Barbarian, but it bears some resemblance, because at various points in it basically each section follows a specific character. Although oftentimes I think every time when we start with a character, the timeline rolls back. So we have our initial setup, which is the thing that was in all the trailers and is referenced in the poster, which is 17 kids just got up in the middle of the night at 2:17 in the morning, left their houses, ran into the dark, and never came back. And that premise is all you should know going in. But watching things go from there as you follow different specific characters, and as you follow each one, and as I said, the timeline rolls back a bit. So you start with one and the story goes forward, gets to a point, then, okay, now we're going to follow this character back to about this point and move forward again. And it's the kind of structure that could be a gimmick in the wrong hands. It's the kind of thing that a lesser film would feel like it's trying to gussy up a pretty mundane story by being weird with the structure. But the story doesn't actually benefit from that. I would say here the experience of watching it very much does benefit from the structure, because it sustains that what the hell is going on portion of the experience, because right when it's getting near to a point where you're like, okay, it's gotta have to start giving me something that's enough for me to start putting two and two together, that's when we jump to another character and it rolls back a bit. And so I do genuinely feel like it enhances the experience. Because like also, it could also be a gimmick to try to string out, what it is that's even happening for as long as it does. But again, it really does feel like it enhances the experience and kind of starts giving you the specifics and the actual core information of what's going on at just the right point in the story. And I am going to get into my thoughts on the specifics of what is going on, but again, that is a bit more spoilery than I want to get. I'll just broadly say performances are great. The structure of the thing overall is great. There are a ton of fantastic small little touches, either in performance or just small visual details about characters and place and location. It feels very fleshed out. Feels like a very real living location where this feels like a real place and real people dealing with something that was horrible, but they also don't know what happened. Like, it's hard to grieve when you don't even understand what it was that even happened. And so different people are struggling with that in different ways, and it all feels very honest. And pretty much every character in this is flawed to some degree, some more than others, for sure. But there's no, 100%, golden hero. There's, no one who's the unblemished person. Everybody was already tarnished in some way before this even happened, simply because they're human. And then that, whatever their own baggage is, impacts how they move forward when this has happened. And it's really good. It's really, really good. And I highly recommend it. I guess the one thing that I will note, this isn't really a spoiler, but like, if you are sensitive to gore, gory moments are not frequent or persistent across the movie, but when they happen, they are pretty harsh. So if that's a hang up for you, that is a warning I'll give. But other than that, I want to get into talking spoilers and talking about what it is that it's actually going on in here, because I find that real fascinating to think about as well. So you've had your spoiler warning. I really recommend this movie, and that you go in unspoiled if you can. Okay, now I'm going to talk the spoilers. So it's a witch. And there is, to call it a hint is an exaggeration. There is the vaguest just notion of witchery, just because the school teacher has her car painted with witch, because people suspect her, because it was everyone in her class except for one kid that this happened to. Of course they suspect her. And initially when you're watching it and you find yourself, from her perspective, where she doesn't know what happened any more than anybody else did, but obviously there is, I don't want to say understandable, but, well, I guess it is understandable, like not reasonable, but understandable suspicion against her, and like how that impacts her. And you watch that, and then you get to Archer, who's the parent of one of the boys that went missing. And it initially feels like, oh, maybe we won't get an explanation as to what happened. Maybe this is just about, this inexplicable tragedy and what it does to a town. But then other stuff goes on. I'm like, okay, no, we're definitely like dealing with something here. This is an active situation. This isn't just a thing that happened. This is actively still going on. And so the witch, Gladys. I did know about Gladys insofar as I had seen some images of her. So I knew she existed in the movie, but I didn't know what her deal was. I did have an inkling as to witchcraft relatively early on, probably sooner than I should have. But what I really admire about this is the way that witchcraft is depicted and handled. Because, how do I want to put this? Despite her very clearly being the villain and the bad guy of this, like unquestionably, despite that, the witchcraft itself feels weirdly respectfully handled. I think it's kind of analogous to how The Exorcist handled its use of Catholicism and that perspective on demonic possession, where, yes, it's taken to a little bit of an extreme, for the sake of a movie, but it's treating it relatively grounded and as a legitimate thing, and it's not just something fanciful. Like, she never waves her hand and there's lights in the sky, and she never shoots a beam of anything. She never says a magic word. And actually, it's the back half of this, when it comes to the witchcraft, is a really, really good instance of showing instead of telling, because we are honestly never told. There was never an exposition scene in this, which is interesting because I'd say the single weakest scene in Barbarian is the one scene of overt exposition with the homeless guy in that movie. I'd say that is the weakest scene in the movie, where we have a scene where somebody sits down and explains what it was that happened. We never get an explanation. We just see it. We see it demonstrated. We see what she does, and we see how she does it, and it's very clear that she is a witch using witchcraft. And again, not like the weird, flashy, whether it's, and she's not like waving a hand and moving things across the room. It's for as much as the degree of control it grants her over people is clearly an exaggeration of, or maybe I guess you could say kind of aligns with the worst version of stories of evil witches sort of thing. But ultimately, like, it's very grounded because it's thorns and blood and hair and tokens and water. It's this much more grounded practice of witchcraft, and it feels very respectful, right down to the fact of Alex turning it on her. Now, this is not explicit in the text, what I'm about to say, but it is my headcanon. And I will not be shaken from it. In my mind, if any of the other characters besides Gladys in the story had tried to do that same magic and turn it on her, it wouldn't have worked. And not just because Alex saw her do it, which he did. She explicitly demonstrated it to him, and in her hubris assumed that it would never be turned against her. But another thing about that, and again, the movie doesn't say this outright, but the whole thing feels so respectful of the practice of witchcraft that I took this as a takeaway anyways. Witchcraft isn't just about doing the thing. It's not like just going down checklists, okay, add this to this and perform this and do this and hey, magic. And when I talk about witchcraft, understand talking about witchcraft is tricky because witchcraft is a thing that is really practiced, and those who believe in it do believe that they have actual tangible impacts in some way, but Hollywood is generally really bad at depicting that. But anyways, one thing that's real key to witchcraft isn't just the action and the ritual, it's the intentionality and the force of your will and desire. And I don't think that anyone other than Alex in that moment would have believed in the power of what he was doing as strongly or have wanted the outcome that he got as badly as he did. And aside from the fact that it's just cathartic to have this kid who's been terrorized by this woman turn this on her and unleash these 17 children that she's just been keeping in the basement onto her. And to do to her what she's been doing to other people, weaponizing these people, and now she's the target instead of getting to send them out against anybody else. And it's really, really just powerful. And I had to sit with it for a little bit, sort of the final note, which is because there's this voiceover that both opens and closes the movie from a character that, so far as I can tell, we don't ever meet. It's like a young girl talking about, oh, this happened in my town 2 years ago. And so far as I know, we never meet this character. But there's a voiceover at the very end where it brings emphasis on the lasting damage. And I had to think about how I felt about that because under other circumstances, I might consider that to be needlessly cruel. You know, it's said that Alex's parents now need specialized care and he's living with another relative. And as for the other kids, you know, it opened with they never came back, and in a way, maybe they never did, even though they do physically get rescued. But there is still that twinge of hope because the voiceover says Some of them even started talking again last year. So it's not completely devoid of hope, but it does have this emphasis on the lasting harm that has been done. Now, you can take this in a metaphorical or allegorical direction if you want to. I'm like, there's certainly plenty of possibilities. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say that in terms of taking a practice like witchcraft and using it for the kinds of means that Gladys was using it for, with the kinds of methods that she was using it, yeah, that's going to leave a lot of damage. That intention, those methods, is going to leave a lasting scar on everyone it has come in contact with. And I'm ultimately okay with the acknowledgement of that. Yeah, this is really good. I suppose the one thing, and the funny thing is, this, I didn't even clock this, but I talked to Jesse, my friend Jesse Gender, about the fact that I'd seen this. And the one thing that she brought up that, as I said, like, I didn't even clock because I was so wrapped up in what was going on. You could argue there is a bit of a bury your gaze thing going on with the character of Marcus, played by Benedict Wong, and his husband. My initial thought is that, like, yes, they're two of the only ones to actually die. They, like, this movie only has a body count of 5, and they make up 40% of it. But it didn't feel like what happened to them was any more pointedly cruel than what happened to everyone else who got really damaged by this and or killed by what's going on in the story. Although I will grant, Marcus, I feel like I had a really good handle on. His husband's one of the least fleshed out characters in the story. And that's even by the metric of side characters. Because, like, say, Paul, the cop, his wife, who only appears in 2 scenes, felt way more fleshed out. And her dad, who's the chief of police, again, like 2-3 scenes with this guy, felt way more fleshed out. Whereas Marcus's husband felt thin and just kind of stereotypical, not quite stereotypical, but just he did feel like the thinnest character in the movie. And I think if that exacerbates for some people the feeling of emphasizing, like, the bury your gaze, like, okay, you didn't even flesh one half of this couple out very well, and you're going to kill them both. If that sits wrong with some people, I get it. And I'm not going to dispute that. Again, though, for me, I was so wrapped up in this. And, like, the characters are... well, most of the characters anyways are so fully formed, because, like, you have characters like James, who, like, he's not a good guy, but wow, did I feel really, really bad for him. And even Archer, like, who's a jerk, and in sort of a indicative of the amount of attention that is paid to the details in most of this. His kid, Matthew, in the flashbacks we see, he's also a bit of a jerk. He bullies Alex in some of the flashbacks. So, like, yeah, this is the kind of parent who would have a bit of a bully for a kid. That tracks. But at the same time, the pain that he feels at believing he's lost his son and not knowing why feels incredibly genuine. And yeah, it's just really, really well put together. And it feels like such an evolution and a refinement of what Krager did in Barbarian, which, like, Barbarian was good, don't get me wrong, but it did have that kind of a little bit scrappy, a little bit rough around the edges feel. This does not feel rough around the edges. This, and just the fact that it comes to an answer that actually feels satisfying. Because when you have an opening premise that intriguing, and that does not point to any clear answer as to what the hell is going on, odds are the answer is going to disappoint you more often than not, and it just didn't in this. This was really good. Weapons. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe, they all help. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lafula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Oliver B, Mystic Shadow, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Pickapok, Becky Sparks, Ulrich, Twilord, Tracy Scrabbit, Palber Rabajoggle, Cindy Ella, Sir Didymus is my favorite, and thanking some random folks from my lower tiers of support. Thank you, Pippa Barwell, Mandy Walla, and Jessica, the Trans Metal Alchemist. The boys are back, and we've got a new one here. We have Navarro has joined the mischief. Okay, so that's just what we're doing now. All right.